Hey guys, this is EdRoh. Today we are going to be building a complete React portfolio app completely from scratch. We'll be using JavaScript and React, Tailwind CSS for styling, Framer Motion for animations, and React Hook Form for form and validation. This portfolio app will consist of a beautiful landing page, a skills section with fluid animations with Framer Motion, project sections to showcase your projects and works that you want to show for future employers, testimonials to display what people are saying about your work, and a contact form that has both input and validation, and you can even send messages to an email that you wanted to send to. And we're going to be using Form Submit, which is a free tool to allow that to happen. And this website will be fully responsive so that it will look good even on the smallest of screens. Now, this tutorial is made for all levels, even those who are complete beginners. So we'll walk you through the very basics and explain everything as I go. This is a fully complete portfolio app that is designed to impress future employers or clients and will help you showcase and place all your projects and works that you have done into this website. This portfolio app is fully custom designed by me, so you're completely free to use this in your own portfolio without any worries of copyright. And that includes images as well as it comes from a free image source website, Unsplash. You can completely customize and tailor this website to whatever your needs are and impress the viewers of your portfolio. Now let's start coding by opening up a new directory. We're going to start with npx create react app react portfolio. Create React app is an easy to use one-line terminal command that allows you to create React boilerplate so you can get up and running very quickly. So we're going to wait for that installation to finish. Once that's finished, we're going to open up the directory that we just created. So cd react portfolio, and we're going to open the folder we just created in a new window. And we're going to go up and open our terminal once again. And this time we're going to install a few other packages. So we're going to install Framer Motion, which is a library for animations. And then we're going to install React Anchor Link Smooth Scroll. And we're going to install these. So React Anchor Link Smooth Scroll is a package that makes it easy to navigate when you click a menu item. It's very easy to use and I highly recommend it. Now, real quick, for those packages, the links for the documentation for these packages are in the description below. But basically, if you go to Framer Docs, that's the location of this one. And then React Anchor Link Smooth Scroll, this is the link for the GitHub. And then now if we go back, we're going to go into our source directory and we're going to be deleting a few files. So we're going to be deleting app.css, app.test.js, logo svg, report web vitals, and setup test.js. So we're going to be deleting those. And then from here, I'm going to go to app.js. I'm going to remove everything in header. And actually, let me close the terminal so you can see better. And I'm going to delete the imports. And we're going to go to index.js, delete report web vitals, and as well as the import. And we're going to save it. Now off screen, I will be adding the images, but if you want the images, you can go to the repo, which is in the link in the description, and you're going to have to download the repo. So you're going to go into assets, and this is where all the images are going to be located. So you're going to have a copy of assets in the source directory and in the public to make it easier. So you're just going to go code, you're going to download zip, and that will give you access to these images. As you can see, I added the images in the source directory, all the images over here, and as well as the public folder. With that, we're going to go into the next step, which is going to Google Fonts, and we're going to import some fonts that we need. So the first thing we're going to open is Open Sans. So if we go Open Sans, we're going to go down and we're going to add regular 400 and semi-bold 600. And then we're going to go back to Google Fonts and we're going to add one more font, and we're going to call this, and this is called Playfair Display. And then from here, we're also going to add regular 400 and semi-bold 600. And once we have that, we can go to the @import link, and then we can copy the @import, and we can go into index.css. We're going to remove all this code, and we're going to just copy and paste into there, and we're going to save it. There's one more thing I want to add, and we're going to create a folder called hooks, and we're going to pass in a file called use media query. Now this is something we'll be using later in this video, and I'm not gonna go too in depth on what's happening, but what this does is that it will determine if you particularly match a breakpoint of a media screen size. For example, we can pass in a media query of min width of 768 pixels, and the use media query will tell us if the current screen size is above that or below that. So this is what this hook does. And it's a very convenient hook that we can do. So I'm going to do this really quickly, but you can copy along as I'll type it here. Or you can just copy and paste from the repo as shown in the description. So we're going to use media query, and we're going to pass in a query string, and we're going to say const matches set matches, and we're going to say use state. We're going to pass it false, and we're going to pass in a use effect, and we're going to give media equals window.match media query, and then if media.matches does not equal the matches value, we're going to set matches to media.matches. And then we're also going to give a listener, and we're going to set matches media.matches. And we're going to say window.add event listener, and we're going to say resize. And we're going to say listener like so, and then we're going to say return window.remove event listener resize listener. And in this use effect, we're going to pass in the second parameter with matches and query. And we're going to return matches like so. And we're going to say export default use media query. So now you don't have to fully understand what's happening over here, but basically what this is saying is that this will allow us to pass in a query, and it'll tell us when it particularly matches this particular breakpoint for a screen size. And I'll show you how this works later on. So I had just a small typo. So there's a colon right there, it should be a semicolon, and we save it and we're good. And then from here, we're going to install Tailwind. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually install some VS Code extensions that I highly recommend if you're using Tailwind. Now there's a lot of VS Code extensions for Tailwind, but there are two that I really particularly like. One is Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, so that when you're typing, for example, let's say we're typing background or BG, it'll tell you and give you a lot of different options for Tailwind so you don't have to remember them. And then there's also one more. There is something called Tailwind Docs, which is more popular, but I particularly like something called Tailwind Documentation, which is right here. Because what this particular thing does is that when you need to reference Tailwind documentation, you can open it up in VS Code with the command called Command Control T. So if I go over here and let's say I want to add, I go over here and I want to add a class, I can do Command Control T and it'll open up the documentation right here. So if I want to search up something like flex, it'll give it to you right here and there. And now you have the flex properties without leaving your VS Code, unlike the other documentation extension. So this is my two recommended VS Code extensions. From there, we are going to be installing Tailwind. So I have a browser on this second screen. I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can see it better. So once you go in here, it gives you instructions on how to install Tailwind. So I'm gonna open up my terminal and I'm going to start running a lot of these commands. So I'm gonna do npm install -d Tailwind CSS. So I'm gonna install that. And I'm going to copy the next command as well once that's finished. And we're going to paste that into the next section. And so we created our Tailwind config.js. And then inside our Tailwind config.js, we are going to be writing a lot of different things here. Okay, from here, we're going to open this up and I'm going to copy this, but I'm going to add a few things. So I'm going to add the content quotation and we're going to add comma JSX because we want to make sure these are getting listened to as well. And then I'm going to add a property called mode JIT, which is just in time mode. But basically what this is doing, it allows you to get some extra features out of Tailwind CSS and allows better modification. And the next is we're going to set up our theme. So I have a lot of different theme inputs here, but it will make our lives easier once we set this up. The first thing is we're going to set blue is going to be 2CBCE9 under the colors. And then red is going to be DC4492. Yellow is going to be FDCC49. Gray is going to be ED. Capitalization, by the way, doesn't really matter. And then we're going to put this in quotes because this one has a dash between. So this is going to be deep blue. And we're going to pass in 010026. Then there's going to be dark gray, and that will be 757575. And then opaque black, and that'll be RGBA 0,0,0,0.35. So these will help allow us to use class names and allow us to use these colors through convenient use. So for example, if we want to set the background to blue, we would just write background blue like that as a class name. So that's what these kind of do. And then we're also going to set rainbow gradients. So if you saw the final image, we have some rainbow gradients that we want to set, but we can't set the rainbow gradients here in the color. So what we do is we set a background image and we're going to set theme and we're going to give it an arrow function. And we're going to say gradient rainbow. And we're going to give it a linear gradient. So linear gradient 81.66 degree, 00B 5EE 7.21%, and FF 45A4 45.05%. And we're going to say FFB, actually this should be in the quotes, so FFB A00 78.07% right here. So now if this is, by the way, if this is too tedious for you to watch, you can skip to the next section. This is all there. You can also just go to the repo and just copy this file. But anyways, we're just going to continue on. We're going to copy and paste this gradient rainbow, and we're going to call this rain blue. So basically, this is the same exact thing. We're just going to tweak the colors a little bit. So we're going to say 90 here. This one's going to be 24 CBFF, and this will be 14.53%. And then we're going to say FC 59FF 69.36, I'm going to scroll over. We're going to say FFB D0C and 107.73. So now we have the background gradients that we can use. And then finally, we're going to add font family, and these will be using the fonts that we created. So we're going to say Playfair, and this will be Playfair Display, and this will be serif as a backup. Same thing with Open Sans. We're going to give it Open Sans like this, sans serif like that. And then finally, we're going to say content. So this will allow us to use images in the before hover CSS tags. I'll show you later if you don't know what I mean. So we're going to say URL-assets/brush.png and then double quotation. I messed this up right here, so this should be single quotes. And then we're going to copy and paste this 4 times. So this will be person 1, and this should be person -1 as well. And this is going to be person 2, and make sure you have a dash right here, and this will be person 3, and don't forget the dash. And then the last thing, I promise this is the last thing for this setup, we're going to have screens. So this will allow us to make our website responsive, gives us the class names that we can use with screens. So we're going to set the breakpoint for XS as 480 pixel, then small as 768 pixel, and MD as 1060 pixel, like so. I know that was kind of tedious, but now we have the theme configured. Next step is we're going to close a lot of these, and we're going to go into our index.css, and we're going to go over to the docs, and we're going to copy these values over here, and we're going to paste them like that. And then from here, we're going to go on to the next step is we're going to go and we're going to copy this terminal command, and we're going to open up our terminal. We're going to paste it, but yeah, we're going to paste it, but don't enter it yet because we want to change a few things. So we don't have something called input.css. We're going to call it index.css. And our output CSS is not going to be in a folder called dist. It's going to be in a folder called public. And we're going to hit enter. So now what this will do is going to watch when we write CSS class names, it's going to generate the output CSS for us, and it'll make it easier for us. And then finally, we're going to put these values into our HTML. So if we go into public, we can see our index.html, and we're going to go in and go under like right before the end of the head. We're going to say link href. Actually, let's just copy this. And instead of dist, we're going to say public. And then from there, we should be good to go. Finally, with that, we have Tailwind set up and installed, and we're all ready to go to build the application. So I'm going to move this out into another separate app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that this is the nav bar right here. What the nav bar allows us to navigate through different pages that we have, like so, and go back up. Same with this. And also note that we also have a dot group that kind of aligns with the same idea. And also the background changes once we are past a certain section. And we also have to make a modification that when we are in small screens, this will change to a small value, and we can see the page that we're on right here and click it as well. So there's a number of things we're going to have to do with our nav bar. With that, we're going to go to our index.css, and we're going to add just a little bit of CSS that's custom for global situations. So we're going to write HTML body hashtag root dot app And we're going to set the height to 100%, background color of 010026, which aligns with our deep blue color. And then we're going to set @apply text dash white. So the default color of the text is going to be white. And this is the only CSS that will actually write without using Tailwind. And then from here, we're going to go to our app.js file. I'm going to close this, close that so you guys can see better. And what we're going to do is we're going to write a few states. The first one being selected page and set selected page. And we're going to say it equals to use state. And as you can see in the IntelliSense, it pops up and we're going to hit enter. And when you hit enter, it automatically imports. So make use of that IntelliSense. It's very convenient. And we're going to set this as home. So this will determine what page we are on. So this is the state that will determine what part of the navigation on the website we are at. The next thing we're going to add is const is above medium screens, which is going to be a Boolean. And we're going to set this as use media query. And also we need to import this. So let me import use media query from hooks / use media query like so. And we're going to pass in a query of min-width 1060 pixels like that. So I forgot one bracket right there. So what this will do is that we're going to be using the media query that we created, and this will set the min width to be 1060 pixels. So what it'll do is it'll determine whether the current browser size of whoever's watching or seeing the website will check if the min width is less than 1060 or above 1060. That's what this variable will give us. And then from here, we're going to change the class name from uppercase app to lowercase app. And then we're going to add a background color of BG deep blue. And as you can see with Tailwind, the VS Code extension, it gives us the IntelliSense to know that this is what we want to type. And we're going to hit enter. So it's very convenient in that regard. And then from here, I'm going to add the navbar component that we have not created yet. And we are going to pass in selected page equals selected page like that. And we're also going to add set selected page like so. And from here, we're going to open up our file directory. We're going to create a folder called scenes. And we're going to pass in a file called navbar.jsx. And then before we type into that, we're going to go and we're going to add an import navbar from ./scenes/navbar. And we're going to go into navbar.jsx. And here we're going to do some imports as well. So we're going to import use state from React, import anchor link. So now anchor link is going to be the link from the React anchor link smooth scroll package that will allow us to navigate to certain parts of the page. And then we also are going to import use media query once again. And we're going to use our IntelliSense to write this and help us write it. All right, let me close this again. And so now we are going to write const navbar, and we are going to pass in selected page and set selected page because we passed these properties in before. And we're going to create some state. So const is menu toggled, set is menu toggled, and we're going to set use state, and it's going to be false. So this state is going to represent when we're on mobile screens only, and it's going to check if we clicked on the menu, which will pop up that menu we have seen before, versus when it's not toggled. And then we're going to create one more media query. So it's going to be is above small screens like that. I'm going to say use media query, and we're going to pass it in min width of 768 pixel, like so. And then from here, we're going to return a nav element. So this is HTML5 semantic element to indicate to the browser that this is going to be the navbar section. All right, from here, we're going to add the class name, and we're going to give it Z40 width of full, so full width. We're going to give it fixed, so that means it's always going to be at the top, and once we do top 0, that'll complete it. And then we're going to say padding in the Y direction of 6, so meaning top and bottom will have a padding of 1.5 rem or 24 pixel, and that's what PY6 represents. And by the way, Z40 represents a Z index, and we're going to set that to be 40. And we're setting that to be 40 because we want it to pop up above over other items. And then from here, we're going to create a div, and we're going to give it class name of flex items center. So item center. So let's open up our doc. So Command Control T, items center represents align items center. So that here in the center, we are keeping it aligned in the center vertically when if the flex direction is horizontal in this case. So we're going to close that. And we're going to say justify between. And again, this is basically a shorthand for justify content colon space between. That's what this represents. And then margin X of auto. So left and right, there's a margin of auto, and we're going to say width is going to be 5.6. So that's 83% of width. So again, these are all styling elements that I've created prior to it, but a lot of it requires just a lot of testing, and then you're going to have to go to the Tailwind documentation if you ever forget. Like Tailwind is very nice. I'll say this, or let me explain Tailwind. And Tailwind is very nice if you want to have very clean code. Like the benefits of Tailwind is that you can write a lot of your classes, have a lot of clean code. It's very convenient if you use selectors like hover or pseudo selectors like hover. Having media queries, things like that makes Tailwind very nice. And there's a lot less imports compared to using like a component library. But Tailwind does require you to know the classes, so it is a little inconvenient if you don't know what you're looking for. Other than that, let's keep moving. And we're going to say H4. We're going to give it a class name of font Playfair. So this will set our text to be the Playfair font. And we're going to give it a size of text 3XL. And we're going to give it a font of bold. And we're going to say JE. So this will represent the logo at the top left. And then from here, we're going to create a comment saying this is going to be the desktop nav. So this next section will represent the navigation for the desktop. So here we're going to say is above small screens. So this is only for desktop, right? And we're going to give it a ternary operator here. And in the first one, we are going to set a div, and we are going to close the div. So in this case, the IntelliSense doesn't automatically work because right now it's registering as we have like a typo essentially. So that's why the prettier is not correctly working. And here we're going to say class name, and we're going to say flex justify between. So again, that's going to be space between. We're going to give it a gap of 16, meaning between the two items, you're going to have a gap of 16, basically 64 pixels. And we're going to say we're going to give it a font of Open Sans, text of SM, so small font, and we're going to say font semi bold. And from here, we're going to create the link now. So before we do that, we're going to create like a custom component for this so that we don't have to repeat a lot of code. So we're going to create a component above here. I'm going to call this const link, and we're going to pass it in a few parameters. It's going to be page, selected page, and set selected page like this. I'm going to give it an arrow function. We're going to say const lowercase page, and we're going to say page to lowercase like so. So this is going to be the text. For example, if I pass in home capitalized like this, we're going to lowercase it. So we're going to have to use both of those versions of the text. Okay, so from here, we're going to return and we're going to pass in anchor link right here. So anchor link comes from that third-party library. So this allows us to create a link that will take us to specific parts of the page. And we need to give it a few properties. The first property is going to be class name, like we normally do. And we're going to pass in a ternary by doing this. And we're going to say selected page is equal to lowercase page. So if you remember, selected page comes from here in the app component, and by default it's at home. So if the current link represents the selected page, we're going to give it specific classes that we need to give. So for example, in this situation, we're going to give a ternary operator. Actually, it should be within the brackets. Just be careful of the syntax here. We're going to say text yellow. So if it is selected, we're going to give it a text of yellow. Otherwise, we're going to keep the text the way it normally is, which is a text of white. And then from here, I'm going to enter. And right here in the class, we're going to add a few more class elements, regardless of whether it's selected. So when we hover over it, we're also going to give it a yellow text. And we're going to give it a transition with a duration of 500. So it doesn't become yellow immediately. It'll give us half a second before it turns. So it gives it a nicer feel. And then from here, we're going to give it an href. And this is going to be hashtag. Remember, you got to put the hashtag right here. And we're going to say lowercase page. So this will identify where we are going to move to. And what we haven't done yet is going to be adding the ID to the particular element that we want this to navigate to. And this is what it's going to look for. But we'll be doing that as we go along. And then from here, we're going to say on click, and we're going to set selected page, and we're going to set that as lowercase page right here. And this will, what this will do is we're going to set the selected page of the current link that we typed at the current moment. So when some user clicks like home, it's going to set this as home. Or if it's going to set it as project page, then it's going to set the projects here. So we're going to pass in a value of page here so we can actually display the text as well. And then finally, we can now use the link. Actually, let's make it a self-closing tag, and we're going to give it properties here. So we're going to give it page is equal to home like this. We're going to set selected page here, and set selected page equals set selected page. And by doing so, we have our desktop nav ready to show. And with that, let's actually show the nav bar, or what we have so far. So I'm going to open up my terminal. I'm going to create the split screen so we can keep the watch of the Tailwind CSS keep going. And we're going to write npm run start. And we're going to open up localhost. And we're going to wait for that. Okay, and then we did export default imported was not found. Oh, so I forgot one thing. We're going to do export default navbar at the bottom of our navbar component. So we're going to save that, and we should see we have the logo and we have the home bar or home navigation. And as you can see, we have two sections right here, split. This was flex, and I highly recommend getting like a VS Code extension that does something like this, like toggle pesticide. This just shows you the layout and how it's set up. So as you can see right here, we have a div that goes around here. We have these two split between, and they're aligned vertically in the center. So this is very handy to see what's going on. With that, let's go back to our code and we can finish up everything we have. I'm going to close the terminal so you guys can see better. So all we have to do is we're going to copy and paste this 5 times, or have 5 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to modify the value over here. So we're going to say skills, projects, testimonials, and contact. So that should give us all of those values. And then from there, we're going to actually change this to a button. I want to change this to a button like that. And we're going to give this an image. So this is going to be the menu icon. So this is when we are not above small screen. So this is basically what happens, or what we show instead of these 5 links. We're going to show a little menu icon over here. And that's what's happening in this section. And we're going to give it a source, and we're going to link it to assets menu icon.svg. So that will give us our menu image. And for this button, we're going to give it a few classes. So class name, we're going to say rounded, and we're going to give it full. So that this essentially does border radius 100 or like 9999. So basically this makes it round. And we're going to give it a background of red color, and we're going to give it a padding of 2. And we're going to say on click, we are going to set is menu toggled, and we're going to switch what the menu toggled version is on. So if we save it, and then from here, we're going to go back and look at it. And as you can see, we have home, skills, project, testimonials, contact. Right now, these don't do anything because we don't have where it's going to go to. But if we go and open up our terminal, we have a bunch of errors. We can ignore this for now because the anchor link does not work yet until we set the ID, as I mentioned before. But instead, we're going to do toggle device, and we're going to click iPhone SE. And now we can see that we have the menu icon when the screen is small enough. So if we do responsive, we can go and see that it changes depending on the screen size. So from here in the mobile screen, we have the button for the menu, but we do not have the pop-up that will come out when you click this button. So we're going to be creating that, and we're going to create a comment. We're going to say mobile menu pop up like that. And we're going to say if it is not above small screens, and if the menu is toggled. Under these conditions, we are going to render this div and all the elements that are inside it. So we're going to create a div like so, and we're going to give this a class name, and we're going to say fixed right 0, bottom 0, and a height of full, so it goes up the entire height. And we're going to give it a background of blue with a width, a fixed width of 300 pixel. Now, if you notice, this is a little bit of a different syntax. Now, normally you have with, and then you can put one of these values up here, but because we use the just-in-time mode, we can give it very specific values if necessary. And in this case, I can set it as 300 pixels in the bracket like this. It's very nice. And then from here, we're going to start by creating the close icon and create a div within that. And it seems like the automatic closing is not working right now. And we're going to say class name, and we're going to say flex, justify, end. Again, that's justify content, space between. So there is a space between them, and giving it a padding of 12. And we're going to create a button. And in this button, we're going to say on click, we are going to set is menu toggled and change the is menu toggled to be the opposite value. And inside the button, we're going to give it an image. We're actually just going to go and copy this right here and instead change the menu to close like that. And that will give us our close icon. And then finally, we'll do the menu items. And we're going to give it a div and close the div as well. And we're going to give it more class names and give it flex. And this will be in the flex column direction. Let me show you what that means. Flex column. So in the flex direction column, that means we have the element going up and down diagonally, or up and down like this, instead of horizontally. And we're going to give it a gap of 10 pixel between each one. And we're going to give it a margin left of 33%. And again, we're using these brackets to give us exact percentage. And we're going to say text 2XL, text deep blue. And then from here, we can just actually just copy this completely and paste it down below. And we should be able to save it. And then if we take a look on the website, let's actually make it small enough. And then when we click it, now we can see all these pages. Perfect. We'll take care of the errors that are happening and the fact that when we select it, it's not changing. That's because we haven't created the href ID tags that we need to do later. Last thing that we need to do with the nav bar is if we go back to the final build, if we move it, we're going to see a red background once you move from the top of the screen. So when you're at the top, you're not going to see a background. Once you move it, you're going to see this red background. So we're going to go back to our code. We're going to go to the top of our nav bar component, and we're going to pass in a parameter that we have not passed in yet. And we're going to go is top of page, and we are going to set const nav bar background, and we're going to set is top of page. We're going to give it an empty string if it's at the top, but if we are not at the top, we're going to give it a background of red. And we are going to pass it into this class name for the navigation, like so. So nav bar background. So we're going to pass that class, and it's going to give a different class depending on if it's at the top of the page. I'm going to save that. We're going to go back to the app, and we're going to go and we're going to pass that in is top of page, is top of page, and we are going to create the is top of page state. So we're going to do const is top of page, set is top of page, and we're going to set use state and set it to true by default. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a use effect like so. And we're going to create a function called handle scroll. And in this function, we're going to say if window dot scroll y is equal to 0, we're going to set is top of page to true. And then if window dot scroll y is not equal to 0, set is top of page to false. Make sure that's a semicolon. And we're going to set window dot add event listener, and we're going to pass it in scroll, and we're going to pass the function that we just created. And finally, we're going to return window dot remove event listener, and we're going to pass the same thing here. So let me explain what's happening. So basically, we're checking the window, which gives us the scroll of y, the position of y on the web page. And if it's equal to 0, we're going to set this to be true. Otherwise, it's going to be false. And we need to add that event listener to the window. Otherwise, this event listener does not happen. And we're going to have to pass in an empty array so that this use effect basically runs when the component is loaded. And then with that out of the way, we're going to go and we're going to create a div, and we're going to give it a class name of width 5/6, which is 83%, margin X of auto, so that there's space on the side and it's centered, and we're going to give it MDH full. So what MD represents is the screen size breakpoint. So if we look back, we go to Tailwind config, this MD is representing this class name. So anytime we want to add a class above this breakpoint only, then we can use this as if it was a media query, which is very convenient. This is one of the best things that Tailwind excels is, which is the media queries. Is very convenient to write and makes it easy and simple to have it visually. And then inside this, we're going to write is above medium screens. And if that's true, we're going to create a component called dot group. So this dot group will be the dots that you would see at the bottom on the right, so that when you can navigate just like you would with this nav bar. So if we go back to our code, we're going to write selected page equals selected page. So we pass this in just like we did for the nav bar. Same thing with set selected page. And we're going to save that. And then from here, we're going to import a component that we have not created yet. So we're going to import from dash scenes slash dot group. And now we're going to go into our scenes folder. We're going to create the new file dot group JSX like that. We're going to save it, close all these tabs, and we're going to start writing our dot group. So we are going to create a component, and we're going to pass in selected page, set selected page like we did before. And we're going to do export default dot group like so. And we're also going to import anchor group or anchor link just like we did, so we can use that to navigate. And then from here, we're going to return a div, and this is going to be a class name. And it's going to be flex column, gap of 6, fixed. So it's fixed at the bottom right. And we're going to give it a position of 60% exactly. And then right 7. So that gives its particular position. Right here gives its position on the bottom right. Okay, so inside this div, we're going to go back and we're going to go to our nav bar, and we're going to go up and copy the anchor link that's in our link component. We're going to copy that. I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to paste it because we're going to use the same logic that we did before. We're just going to modify it. So what we need to do is get rid of the other tag, make this self-closing. And what we're going to do is get this lowercase page, say home, like that in the string. Same with over here. And then here we can just remove this entire thing and just say hashtag home. And we're going to take care of the styles when it's a selected page. But first, let's worry about when it's not selected. We're going to say it's background, dark gray, like that. We're going to delete everything here. And we're going to give it a width of 3, height of 3. And we're going to make everything rounded so it's a circle using rounded full. And so this selected style is going to be quite a lot of things. So we're going to create a variable up here so there's more space. And we are going to be reusing it. So this makes more sense. So we're going to give it a string. We're going to say relative background of yellow. We're going to give it before of an absolute, before with a width of 6, before with a height of 6, before, let's actually make this on the next line, before with rounded full, so it's a circle, before with border 2, before with border yellow, before of left negative 50%, and the final line before of top and negative 50%, like so. So let me explain what's happening. So here we're going to set the parent or like the main class to be relative. With this before tag, it's a way of using this current div, and we can put something like above it or below it using this as the parent component. Like this is the parent component. The before would be the child component, but we're not actually creating a new div. This is allowing us to just use CSS to create something above or below using this as the parent class, basically. So that's why we do relative. This is going to be absolute, meaning this position of whatever this thing is going to be relative to this parent class. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a width of 6, height of 6, and give it a round shape with a border of 2 and a border of yellow. So this allows us to have a circle around the circle. And this is positioning it properly around it. And then finally with this, we can give this actually selected styles right here, and that should give us our dot. So if you take a look, we have our dot. So actually the position is a little messed up. So let me double check. Oh yeah, so left, I forgot a dash right here. If we save it, now it's centered. So this means it is selected. And now with that, we can copy and paste it for 5 of these. And again, we can just Command D 3 times, and we can put skills as the next one. Same thing with the next one. We're going to say this is projects. Same thing with the next one will be testimonials. And the last thing is going to be contact. And if we save it, now we'll have 5. And as you can see, again, it doesn't work because we have not put the ID. And with that, we can close the doc group. We can go back to our app.js and we can add landing. And we're going to give it set selected page. and we're going to close this. And the reason why we're giving it set selected page is because there's a contact us button, and it will take us down to the contact us page, and that's why we are using set selected page for that. And then from here, we're going to go up and we're going to import landing from /scenes/landing. And it's a component that we have not created yet. So we are going to go to our scenes folder and we're going to create landing JSX like so. We're going to close our app and close this, and we're going to create our landing component. So const landing, and we're going to pass in set selected page like so, and then we are going to export default landing like so. And we want to import a few things. So we're going to import use media query from /hooks use media query. We're going to import motion from frame or motion. So write this particular one. And we're also going to import anchor link. And we're going to give it use media query. So you're going to use is above large screens. Actually, this is above medium screens. And you can say use media query. And we're going to say it's a min width of 1060 pixel, like so. Make sure you close the parenthesis. And we're going to return, and we're going to give this a section HTML tag. And in this section HTML tag, we're going to give ID of home. Now, if you remember, I mentioned about the ID, that's what the anchor link is using. So this is referring to basically whichever section that we're looking for. So that's where it comes from. And then from here, we're going to give this a class name, and we're going to give it above medium screens. We're going to give it flex. Same with justify between MD. Actually, let's close this so we have more space. MD of items center. MD of H full, so it's a full height. In a gap of 16 with padding in the Y direction, Y up and down direction of 10. So again, we are only allowing it to be flex only when it's above medium screens, and we're giving it justify between. And with that, let's save it. But let's go back to our fully built application. If you take a look, we have a bunch of text here, and we have this image. So if you take a look and look at this, we have basically a flexbox container, and we're aligning these two in this direction. So you'll see that they're split. However, when we go back to our code, what we're first going to do is we're actually going to create the image section first, even though the text is on the left side, even though this one would be the first one. And the reason why we're doing this is because when we're dealing with responsive circumstances, we want this to be on top. So if I increase this or decrease the size of the screen, you see that this image goes on top. And that's going to be the default way the image is going to be handled. However, once we are in the bigger size, we're going to have to force that to be the second position. So we'll do that by adding a class called MDOrder2. So we're creating a div. We're going to say class name, and we're going to give it MDOrder2. So that means it allows it to be the second position in the flex box if it is above medium sized screens. And then we're also going to do flex, justify center like we normally do. And we're going to give it a flex basis of 3/5. So flex basis is the percentage that you use when you're using flex. It's preferable over using width, and it allows you to have specific properties when you use this particular CSS property. And we're going to give this a Z index of 10, a margin top of 16. And we're going to say MD, of above medium-sized screen, we're going to give it margin top of 32. And then inside this, we're going to say if it's above medium screens, we're going to create this element. Let's actually add this as well. Have a closing div like so in this ternary operator. Same with this as well. So now we don't have any linting issues. And inside here, we're going to put an image tag. We're going to have it self-closing. We're going to give it an alt profile, and we're going to give it a source of assets / profile image. So this will be the main image. And for the class, we're going to add quite a few things here. This is going to be a lot of CSS. So we're going to start with relative. We're going to do the same thing we have done before with the doc group. We're going to use relative as the main class, and then on the before tag, we're going to have absolute. This will allow us to build the border that you would see here. Let me turn this off. This will create this behind this image. And that's what we're trying to target. So we're going to go in here. We're going to do relative. We're going to give this a Z index of 0, a margin left of 20, a before tag of absolute, a before tag with negative top of negative 20. So that positions the border. And we're going to have a before with negative left of 20. So again, moving to the left of the image. And we're going to go to the next line. We're going to say before rounded top of 400 pixel. So this gives it the rounded shape that you saw. And then before of width of full, so that the width will expand to the biggest width. And we're going to give it a max width so it doesn't expand beyond this point if the screen is larger. So 400 pixel. And we're going to say before with a height of full. And on the next line, we're going to say before with border 2, before with border blue to make it that blue color. And finally, we're going to set this as before with the Z index of -1 so that we place it behind the image. So I know that was a lot of CSS, but all this before tag is doing is styling that border, positioning it behind the image, and giving it the border of blue color. That's all it's doing. So this is very useful, like I said before, is to create something right using the same position as the parent element and moving it relative to that original position. So that's what before tag is very good for. And we're going to set a class name on the image now. And we're going to say when we hover over it, Tailwind allows us to write hover CSS elements like this. And right here, we're going to give it a filter, and we're going to give it a saturate of 200. So basically, when we hover over it, we're going to give it a filter with a saturation of 200%. That's what you see when you get the effect. And we're going to give it a transition of duration 500. So it doesn't happen immediately. You have a little bit of smooth delay that happens. We're going to give it a Z index of 10, a width of full. And on the next line, we're going to say max width of 400 pixel. And if it's above medium screen, we're going to give it a max width of 600 pixel. So I know that was quite a bit. We're going to save it, and we're going to double check that we are on the right track. And as usual, we have from hooks, so that's not properly right. Let's save it, and now we can see this image. We have not created the text, but right now, this is kind of what we expected. We have this border that happens behind the image, and we have the image right here, and it's also rounded, and you can scroll over, gives it a saturate version. But now let's handle the situation where it's not above. So above medium screens. So here we're going to give it an image tag, and we're just going to do the exact same thing, except without having a background border. So we're just going to copy this and paste it here. And that's actually all we need to do. We're going to save it so that when we decrease the width of the screen, now you don't have a border and you have everything that you would need. And from here, we're going to create the text section. So we're going to call this the main section. And in this, we're going to create a div and give this a class name of Z30, basis of 2/5, margin top of 12, MD of MT32. The reason why we're adding all these Z indexes is so that things go above and below and they cause a little bit of chaos. So we need to affect the Z indexes. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the headings section. And in this section, we're not going to use a div. We're actually going to use motion.div. So motion is part of Framer Motion, which is a package that allows us to use very ready to use animations that are very simple. So if we go back and we're going to look at a production app, we're going to refresh this page. And as you can see, these things faded in and moved from left to right. Framer Motion allows us to do something like this very easily and convenient. So all we have to do is we're going to take whatever is in here. You just have to wrap it with motion.div, and that gives us ready to use animations, which is very, very simple. You just have to make sure you give it the right properties. So the way this works is that you have something called initial, and this will be the name of the initial condition. So hidden will represent when we start, and then we'll have a final condition called while in view. And this, we're going to set it to visible. So these are terms that I'm setting called hidden and then visible. So meaning while in view represents when you scroll to the section where this div is seen. So that's what this is representing. So once this div is seen or shown on the screen, then we can run our animation. And we also need a viewport to give it a proper setting. So we're going to give it once is true and amount of 0.5. So what this means is relevant to while in view. So meaning this animation will run when you get to this point in the page or the website, and it'll run once. It'll run once, and it requires the div to be shown at from 0.5%. So 50% of it, of the div, has to be visible on screen for this animation to be run. And then right here, we're going to do a transition, and we're going to set it a duration of 0.5. So basically half a second for this animation to occur. So that's how long it will take. And finally, we're going to set variance. So this is where the actual animation settings we are considering. So using our initial setting, which is hidden, we're going to give it an opacity of 0 and an X position of -50. So it's going to start -50 from where it originally is located. And then once we have a visible condition, we're going to set opacity of 1 and X of 0. So what this essentially is doing is once this div is in view on the screen, we go from an opacity of 0 to an opacity of 1, so it's visible, and we go from a position of -50 to 0. And I can't demonstrate this yet because we don't have anything, so let's go with that. So we're going to put a paragraph tag and give this a class name, text of 6 XL, so that's a very large font size, and we're going to give it a Playfair font with Z index of 10 and a text of center, and give it a text start if it's above medium-sized screens. And we're going to say Jane space this, because this gives us a space if we add a tag. So if we didn't have this thing right here and we have an element right after, there would be no space here. And that's why we do this. And in this span, we're going to say Esper. So that's her last name. And we're going to say class name equals empty quotes. We're going to, let's actually enter that. So we have space. And there's going to be quite a few classes here. So we're going to say XS. So if it's above smaller, like really small screens, we're going to say it's going to be a relative. And we're going to say XS is going to be text of deep blue, XS of font semi-bold, Z20. And what we're going to do is going to be another before situation. If you go back, and we're going to see on this final screen, we have this image behind Esper, and we're going to use before for that. So if you go and look, we have the before tag that we're creating, and we're going to do this only on the small screen or above very small screen. We're going to remove this image, and we do this by adding XS, so basically above small screens, and using the before selector, we're going to add content brush. So this is equivalent to CSS property of content, and we're giving it a content of brush. Now, if you remember in our configuration, we gave it a content of brush PNG. So if you wanted to add images to the content of a before tag, this is how you would do it. So you pass before content brush, and that will give us the image as we need. And then from here, we can do what we did before with before absolute. Before, actually close this. And we're going to give it a negative left of -25 pixel. I'm going to hit enter. We're going to do before of negative top, -70 pixel. And a before of Z -1, so it's behind everything. And we can save that. And finally, let's add one more thing. We're going to add the final paragraph. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this off screen. So you have random text. You can put whatever text you want there. And the class name is equal to margin top of 10, margin bot of 7, text of small, text of center, and MD text start. And one last thing is I noticed I didn't close this div properly over here. There should be a div after line 35. We should be closing this div with the image section. And if we add this closing div, we also need to get rid of one of the divs on line 67 or 68. So we're going to remove this one and we're going to save it. And now if you take a look, everything is supposed to be where they are. And as you can see with the motion.div, this comes in from -50 and fades in. And if we go over here, we can see everything becomes very responsive, and at very small screens, the image disappears. With that, we're going to create the next section, which will be the call to actions. And it's going to be inside this div, not like outside of it, not below this. So we're going to create call to actions. And we're going to pass in motion.div, so we have another animation going on. And what we can do is we're going to copy everything that we have up here for the headings, pass that in there, and we're going to actually change a few settings, and we're just going to add a delay of 0.2. So this animation will occur, then this one will happen slightly after. So it gives it a nice fluid feel so that not all the animations happen at once. And we're going to give this a class name of flex, margin top of 5, justify center, MD justify start. This is for responsive. And inside this motion div, we're going to be adding an anchor link. So this will represent the button, and this will take us to the contact section of the website. We're going to say contact me, and we're going to be adding a lot of different things. So we're going to say class name, like so. We're going to say on click, set selected page, and call this contact, href. Actually, that should be closed right there instead. So href is going to give it contact like that. And we're going to give it a different number of classes like we normally do. So background of gradient rain blue. So if you remember back when we talked about it, we're actually going to give it a gradient background image with this gradient rain blue. And that's how we do it. So this button has this particular gradient color. And we're going to give it a text of deep blue color, a rounded, like a slightly rounded border radius with a padding in the Y direction of 3, padding in the X direction of 7, a font of semi-bold. And we're going to say hover. We're going to give it a background of blue, and hover, we're going to give it text of white with a transition of duration 500. And then finally, or not finally, we're going to create another anchor link. We're just going to copy this, and we're going to change this, and we're actually going to pass in a div, and we're going to say let's talk for that section. And with this anchor link, we're going to change all these classes, and we're going to change this to rounded right SM. So this will give us border radius only on the right borders. We're going to give it a small amount, and then a background gradient of rain blue, padding of Y of 0.5, PR of 0.5 as well. And we have a div inside, and this will have a class name of background deep blue with a hover of text red, transition of duration 500 with a width full, H full, flex, items, center, justify, center. And the last thing we need is font of Playfair and padding in the X direction of 10. Now I know that's a lot of CSS, but with that, we have our contact buttons over here. And then finally, we're going to go down, we're going to create the social media icons. The last thing on this page. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. So if you go here, we're going to say motion.div. And we're going to copy everything once again from the previous one. And we can actually keep everything pretty much the same except for the delay. So 0.4, so this one happens a little later. And we're going to pass in a component that we have not created called social media icons. And the reason why we're creating this as a separate component is because we're going to be reusing this for the footer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to import social media icons that we have not created. And we're going to take it from the components folder, social media icons, like that. I'm going to save that. So now we actually need to create a folder called components. So this folder, when we're talking about architecture, this is components that we can share across different scenes. So these basically represent different sections or different pages or different features of the page, whereas components represent reusable components that you would use in multiple sections of the scenes. This is a very common pattern of architecting. But either way, we're going to create social media icons, JSX. And in this component, I'm going to create social media icons, like that. Export default social media icons. And we're going to say we're going to return a div and give this a class name of flex justify center. Above large screens, we're going to say justify start. We're going to say margin in the Y direction of 10 with a gap of 7. And in here, we're going to have a bunch of hyperlinks with images. So here, we're going to say class name of hover opacity 50, transition duration 500. So when we hover over it, it's going to give it an opacity of 50. And we're going to say this should link to LinkedIn. So now you can put your own LinkedIn here if you want to. And we're going to say target of underscore blank. So this opens it up in a new tab as opposed to the same tab you're already in, which is more convenient. And we're going to say rel is no refer. So this allows us to have no bugs or no issues with older browsers. If you don't have this and you're using target blank, you're going to cause potential security issues for older browsers. And so we're going to go image, and we're going to say alt of linked in link, and give it a source of /assets/linked in.png. And we're going to close that, and that's our first link. And then from here, we're just going to copy this 4 times. 3, 4. And we're just going to change everything to different links. So a little tedious. Now I know we can just create a separate component for each of these and modify it, but sometimes it's not worth it. A lot of people overdo the fact that you want to use reusable components to save time. But a situation like this where you're just copying it over and over, I highly recommend not reusing components if you don't need to. You just have to make sure, because sometimes making the reusable components takes a lot longer than just copying and pasting it if you don't need to modify it a lot. So it's dependent on your specific use case. But I've seen a lot of people try to make reusable components when they don't need to. So anyways, I have been writing down each of these links. Actually, I could do that a little faster. And I think, let me double check. So I got LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So I don't need this last one. And then finally, let's just double check everything is working. And we have our links right here. Perfect. And we can click out, and it takes us to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Perfect. And with that, we can close this. The next thing we're going to do is let's check our final build, and we're going to go to our skills page. It's going to consist of a flex where you have two sections right here, and you have another before tag with this border. And then we're going to have a line gradient right here, as well as up here, we'll have this division, and we'll have three different parts with flex. And we're going to make sure these are all responsive so that once you decrease the size, the border goes away, and you have items aligned in a vertical position. So we're going to get with that. From here, let's close this landing. We're going to go to our app file. We're going to go down, and below our div, we are going to be adding a component called line gradient. We haven't created this yet, but we will. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top. We're going to import line gradient from /components/line gradient because we have not created this yet. And we're going to go into our components folder. We're going to add line gradient.jsx like so. And we're going to start filling this out. We're going to say line gradient is equal to, and we're going to export default line gradient like so. And here we're going to set a width because we want to be able to set the width to be different sizes. So we're going to say W full as the default. This is the default width unless specified. And we're going to return div with a class name of h0.5. And we're going to give it a width. BG gradient rain blue will be the color. And this is all we have to set. Now there is a semantic element called HR, but we can't really use that with background gradient rain blue because this doesn't work with border colors. So you it doesn't really work with border colors and the horizontal rules. So you kind of have to use a div, give it a height, and actually then you set the background of the div. So this is the solution to that. And then from here, we're going to go to our app.js, and we're going to create another div. And this div is going to have the same thing as before with the class name, like so, with a width of 88%. The reason why we don't surround the line gradient is because we want this to span the entire width of the screen, whereas this is just 83% of it. And we want to make sure everything else is not within the entire width. And we're going to call this my skills. And we're going to do what we normally do. We're going to import my skills from /scenes/my skills like so. And we're going to go back to our file directory browser, and we're going to create a new file called myskills.jsx. And we're just going to save this and close everything else like that. With this, we're going to import a few things. We're going to import line gradient from what we just created, components/line gradient. Then we're going to import use media query from /hooks use media query like so, and then import motion which is all the way over here from framer motion. And we're going to say my skills is a component. And we're going to export default my skills like this. And then from here, we're going to create a const is above medium screens. And we're going to say is use media query min width of 1060 pixel. Close that. And we're going to return, give it a section like so. And we're going to set the ID, if you remember again, for the nav bar. This will identify where we navigate to. And we're going to give this a PT of 10, PB of 24. And then from here, we're going to get header and image section. And we're going to surround this with a div. This div is going to have a class name of, if it's above medium screens, we're going to give it flex, medium, justify, between, medium, gap of 16, and margin top of 32. And this was what I was showing you before. When you're not in smaller screens, you're going to have a flex and you're going to be able to move them accordingly. And then from here, we're going to give this a motion div. So this has animation. And we're going to go back to, I believe, landing, where we had motion div. We're just going to copy this again. So we're just going to continually copy that and give it different settings. So we're going to start with hidden, visible, everything's good over here. Actually, everything is fine. We just need to add a class name and give it width of 1/3 if it's on larger screens. And in here, we're going to say, we're going to give it a p tag. And this p tag is going to have a class name of font Playfair with font semi-bold, text of 4XL, and margin bot of 5. And we're going to say my span class name text red for skills. So the skills part is colored, whereas mine is not. And we're going to give it a line gradient here. And this one, we're going to set it a width of 1/3. So 33%. So it doesn't go all the way for this one. And we're going to give it a paragraph tag, class name with margin top 10, margin bottom 7, like so. And I'm going to copy the text that I basically have. You guys can put whatever text you guys want right there. But this is a bunch of gibberish text. I'm going to save it. And then we have that particular section. And then from here, we're going to go on to the next part. And below the motion div and above the div, we're going to add another div. And we're going to add class name with margin top 16. And we're going to give it a margin top of 0 for larger screens. And here, if it's above medium screens, we are going to give it a div. And inside this div, we're going to give it an image, like so. And what we're going to do, we can actually go to our landing page again, and we're going to find one where we have the image. So let's go above here. Yeah. So right here is kind of similar to what we have been doing, except with a different border. So actually, let's replace all of this with what we had before, because what we're doing is very similar. Now we're just going to modify this a little bit. So we're going to have negative top of -10, not 20, and 10. Let me close this to better see it. And we're not going to have, we don't need rounded borders, so we're going to remove this. Let's see if we have before with a full, height of full. We don't need a max width. And we can say border is 2, border blue, Z, and everything else is perfect the way it is. And then from here, we're going to change the alt to be skills. I'm going to change this to skills image as well. And we're going to remove all of this. The only thing we need is to add a Z index of 10 so that it pops up. So as you can see, this is the same thing we did before. I know you're probably getting sick of it, but it is a very nice way. And then from here, I'm just going to copy this real quick and paste it over here. And this should be exactly the same. So that when we are on smaller screens, we can just have the image without the border in the behind. And then from here, we can go on to the next section. We can say skills, and we can give it another div. All right, in the skills section, we're going to give it a class name. And we're going to say above medium screens, it's going to be flex, justify between, margin top of 16 on all screens, and gap of 32. So this is going to be sideways horizontally flexed as we've seen before, but when you're on smaller screens, we're going to vertically align them. So we're going to start with experience, and we're going to start with emotion.div. And close that. We're going to go up, copy this motion div properties again, and paste it over here. And this one should have actually a margin top of 10. And everything else looks pretty good. We're actually going to set this as 50, so it comes from the bottom instead of -50. Actually, this should be Y, sorry. These should be Y, so it comes from the bottom instead of the left or right. And then here, we're going to have a div. We're going to say class name of relative h32, so height of 32. And we're going to give another div inside. And in this, we're going to say class name of Z10. And inside this, we have paragraph tag, and this should be 01. And the second paragraph tag, and we're going to say experience. And we're going to give this different class names. So this is going to have a class name of font play fair with font semi-bold and text of 5XL. And we're going to copy this class name right here. We're going to paste it over here, and the only thing that's different is going to be 3XL with the margin top of 3. And then from here, we can do a div class name of width of 1/2, width of 3/4 for bigger screens, height of 32, background blue, absolute, right 0, top 0, Z of -1. So this sets the position of the box that we have. So there's like a box to the top right of this particular div, and this is how you would set that positioning. And then finally, we have a final p tag, and this one is going to have a class name of margin top 5. And we're going to copy a bunch of random text, and I will place that here. And that's our experience one. And then from there, I'm actually going to copy all of this so that we can have the next section, which is very similar. So we're going to say innovative, and we're going to give this a delay of 0.2. So we have staggered animations. And then we're going to go down, change the text 02. We're going to say innovative. And we're just going to have different set of text over here. And instead of this background being blue, this should be red for the div in this section. And then finally, we're going to copy this and do the same thing for the final one. This is going to be imaginative. And we're going to say delay of 0.4. This should be 0.3. Imaginative over here with a background of yellow instead. And we're going to give it a different set of text. And once we save that, let's actually check our app is working. So if I go to skills, and there you go, we have everything we need. Let's check the responsive, and perfect. Everything gets aligned vertically perfectly. Okay, from here, we're going to go back and look at our final build, and we're going to go and look at the projects page. So now the projects page has this heading, it's centered. As you can see, there was a staggered animation of items coming in, and when you hover over it, you can see this element pop up for these texts as you scroll around. And we have these final static images for the first and the last one. And now if we go and do responsive, you can see at some point, we're just going to get one line of all your projects like this for smaller screens. And so with that, let's get to it. So we're going to go back, we're going to close both of these, and we're going to go to our app.js file. And then from here, we're going to import projects from .scenes/projects, again, a component that we have not created yet. And then once we scroll down, we're going to go to under my skills, we're going to add a line gradient like so. And we're going to add another div. We're just going to copy 41 through 43 down over here. And this is just going to be changed to projects. And actually, we do not want the height to be full, because before, the reason why we set this height to be full is so each page takes up the entire 100%. But the project section takes up more than that, so we don't want it to overflow. And we're going to save that, and we're now going to go and create a file called projects.jsx, and we're going to start filling this out. So we're going to import, actually let's close all of this. We're going to import line gradient from .components/line gradient, import motion, from framer motion like that. And we're going to create our component called projects. All right, and then from here, we're going to do what we have done. So there's a lot of similar things that we do, but we can't really copy most of it. So we just kind of have to type a lot of this out. So this one, we're going to have a padding of top 48, padding bottom of 48. And there we have our section, and we're going to create a section called headings. Now this heading section, now we can create a component, a reusable component for all of these, for the headings, but in my opinion, they were too different that it's not worth the pain to do that. So we're just going to go and copy this section over here from the My Skills page, and we're going to have that particular thing copied. Now we're going to have to make some adjustments here. So we're going to say margin, sorry, not the margin. We're going to say width of 2/5 if on bigger screens, a margin X of auto with text being centered. Hidden, visible, once, these are perfectly fine. We're going to say that these comes from the bottom. So we're going to say Y is -50. And in this, we're going to give a div around this p tag, so around where the my skills is, there should be a div. So in here, we're going to say PROJETS, like this, with the span around pro and JECTS outside of it. And this could be left the same, except we can remove margin bot of 5. And then inside this div, actually, we're going to add the line gradient, and we're going to surround it with the div, like so, and going to give this a class name of flex, justify, center, and margin top of 5. The reason why we're surrounding this is because we want to center this line gradient. And then from here, this padding is fine, or paragraph tag is fine. And we're just going to copy and paste a random set of text. And the margin bottom is going to be 10 instead. And as you can see, there's a lot of little configurations. That's why I did not make this reusable, because it would be a pain to make it all configurable in this case. And that should conclude our heading section. All right, and then now for the project section. So let's create a section called projects, and we're going to give it a div. We're going to give it a class name of flex, justify, center. And we're going to go and copy the motion div above here. I'm going to adjust it like we normally do. / motion div, like that. Indent it, space it out. And then from here, now the projects, if you go back, you see that there is a grid that's happening. And we're going to use this with a 3-grid system. And we only want the grid system to be when it's above certain screens. So we're going to say SM. So above small screens, we're going to say grid. And also above small screens, we're going to say grids, columns, 3. So what this is doing is it's going to set a grid column of 3 automatically. So any 3 I put, they're going to be aligned in here. So any child that we put, they're going to have each take up a row of 3 divided in perfect fractions. And so we have hidden, visible, and viewport. Now, with this, we're going to be doing a little bit differently, because what we've seen here, let me refresh and the final build, is that all of these are staggered. Now we can create each one, we can create a child component that is delayed after, but it doesn't do the way we want. We want, once this triggered, we want this to completely finish regardless. Whereas if we did it the way we do and we stop here, the animation would not happen. Like these 2 would happen, but these 3 would not happen yet. So this is where we're going to do like a staggered complex animations. But basically, you're just going to have a parent motion div dictating what's happening with the child ones. So instead, we're actually going to abstract this out right here in the variants. So we're going to take this object out. We're going to call this container. We're going to remove transition because we don't need that with this. And we're going to scroll up and we're going to write const container. And we can say hidden, nothing will happen. Whereas at visible, we're going to say we have a transition with stagger children of 0.2. So that means the animations will happen for each children one by one with a 0.2 gap in between. And then we're going to do for single item variant, we're going to call this project variant because these are separate projects. And for this, we're going to say hidden, we're going to say opacity of 0. So we're starting from invisible, we're going to scale this from 0.8, and we're going to say visible will give us opacity of 1 with the scale of 1 like this. So now this will be the initial item for each child. This will be the final condition for each child. And we'll be creating a separate project item for each one. But before we do that, let me create one div because it represents the static element at the top, which is beautiful user interfaces. So this is the first item. This one will be different from the other ones because it doesn't include the project. So we're going to say this has a class name of flex, justify, center, text, center, items, center. So this everything is vertically and horizontally aligned. We're going to give it a padding of 10, a background of red. We're going to give it a max width of 400 pixel for responsive purposes, so it doesn't go beyond this width. Same with the height, 400 pixel. A text of 2XL size, a font of Playfair, font of semi-bold. A lot of classes for something very simple. So this is going to be row 1. And then from here, what I'm going to do is okay, that's not what I meant to create. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a project component. And I'm going to give it a title of project 1, like so. And we're going to create this component up here at the top. So we're going to say const project like so. And we're going to give it a title. And what we're going to do is we're going to give a separate project title so it's formatted in the correct way. So we're going to say title.split with a space. So by the way, for example, title can be an example of project 1. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. So we're splitting this between these two items. We're going to join them with a dash in between, and I'm going to convert them to lowercase. So in this case, what we are converted to is going to be project dash 1, like that. That is what this is doing. So we need this format to reference our image. And then in the return over here, we're going to say motion.div because we need this to be the child element. So like I said before, this motion div, since this is the parent variant, we need the child to be a motion div as well so it can detect that the other one was the parent. So here we have motion div. We're going to give it variance of project variant. And that is basically all we need to set for the child one. And we're going to say, give a class name of relative. And this is because we're going to set the overlay. As you can see with the relative and the absolute, this plays a lot when you put stuff over other things or below things. So very important concept for CSS to understand, relative and absolute, even though they're a little bit trickier to fully digest. And in here, we're going to give this a class name, but we're going to call this overlay styles, a variable we have not created. And this is going to represent the text that pops up over the image. And we're going to say overlay styles up here. And we're going to say absolute with a height of full, width of full, and opacity of 0. And when we hover over it, though, we give it an opacity of 90%. So it starts with 0, but when you hover over it, this overlay style will pop up above it. And here we're going to give it a transition with a duration of 500. And then a background of gray. Z index of 30 so it pops up above everything. Give it a flex with flex column so we're centering the text with justify center and vertically aligning the text with items center, which is the equivalent of align items center. And then text center as well. We're going to give it a padding of 16 and a text of deep blue color. And inside this will be the text that we want to create. So we're going to give it a P and we're going to pass in the title over here with a class name of text 2XL font play fair. And we're going to give it a second P tag. And in this, I'm going to give it a random set of text. Now, if you wanted individual text, you would have to add subtitle or whatever and then place that in here. But I'm not going to do that for the sake of time. So we're going to say class name of margin top of 7 right here. And below this div, we're going to say image with the source of syntax. Sorry, what was it? The template? Yeah, template literals dot assets slash project title PNG. So this will be again project -1 all undercase. That will be our source. That's where our images come from. And we're going to say alt of project title like so. And that will represent the project. And then from here, this should be pretty simple because now all we have to do, we can just copy this and we're going to say project 2 instead. And we're going to say row 2 and we can just copy this again and say product 3, 4, project 5, and then row 3, and we're going to say project 5 or 6 and 7. And then finally, we can do the same thing because we have the same static text at the bottom. We're going to say smooth user experience. And this one is going to have a background of blue. That's the only difference. And we're going to save it. Now we're going to check not the final build, this is the final build, but our build. And we're going to go down to projects. And it seems our image is kind of messed up. So let me fix that. What happened was, if you go back to your code, under the project component, I set this to PNG, but this should be JPEG instead. Not sure why I wrote PNG. So if I go back, now if I refresh, you can see the staggered animations going down and everything is perfect. You can see the animations going in, and once it hits the viewport, we can see it. So let's refresh it. We can go projects, bam, everything goes. Okay, from here, we're going to go back to our app file and we're going to start creating our testimonials page. But before we do that, let's actually demo. So if we go back to our final build, we're going to go to our testimonial section and we're going to have our heading like usual and staggered animations of these 3 elements coming from left to right. And this image has been positioned above this blue item. So again, this is going to involve having a before and after tag. We're going to have these 3 images be placed in this weird, tricky situation. So I'll show you how you can do that. It's very similar to what we have done before. So let's go back to our code. And in this section, we're going to create another line gradient. So we're going to copy from 44 to 47. So we're going to say line gradient like that. And we're going to say testimonials. And we're going to copy the MDH full. So this one is going to take a full height. And we're going to go back up, import testimonials here from /scenes /testimonials. And we're going to be creating this component. So new file, testimonials.jsx. I'm going to close that, close this. And then from here, we're going to import line gradient from /components/line gradient, import motion from framer motion. And then we're going to create the component testimonials. We're going to set export default testimonials. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off writing our testimonial styles. And this is going to represent that image that we saw. So we want to create the background. First, we're going to have mx of auto, so it's positioned in the middle. We're going to give it a relative like we normally do with a max of width 400 pixel. So this is the width of that blue box, red box, yellow box, and a height of 350 pixel. Let me remove this space. And we're going to say flex column, and justify end. So this is designated for the text, and we're putting the text at the bottom of the box. And then from here, we're going to give it a padding of 16 at the top with a margin top of 48. And now we can do the before tag to position our images. So we're going to say before of absolute, before of top negative 120 pixel, before of negative ml, so margin left of 110 pixel. And the point of this one is this is half the width size. So if we want to center it, we need to move this left 110 pixel, and we need to set left of 1/2. So we move it left 1/2, but then we have to move it half the width of the image. So that's how you position the image in the center. And then this is the common styles that we're going to be using for 3 of them. And we'll deal with certain specifics and the image itself in the later sections. So we're going to say return, and we're going to start with the section like we did before, given an ID of testimonials, a class name with a padding top of 32, padding bottom of 16. And we're going to start with the heading. And we're going to say motion.div like so. And we're going to go back. We're going to go to, let's say, my skills, because this is the most closest to what we're trying to build. And we're actually going to just replace what we have. So motion.div, we have everything. And we're just going to add a few things with the class. So text center. And if it's above medium screens, we're going to say text of left. And then from here, once true, everything's good. Everything looks pretty good. Let's change this to testimonials. We want this actually to be text of red. A line gradient. This one is going to be a little different. We're going to say mx of auto with a width of 2fit. And we don't need a margin bottom for this one. And we're just going to copy the random text that I have. And I just added this extra text right here, but it's up to you. And for some reason, I did not write the entire testimonials text. So that will be our heading. Very similar to what we have before. And then we're going to have a testimonial section. And we're going to give it a div And in this, we're going to do class name. And above medium screens, we're going to say flex. And we're going to say justify between with a gap of 8. And once again, we're going to copy the motion div, just the properties. So we have motion.div. We're going to close that. And in here, we're going to pass the properties in. And inside the class, this is going to be a little different. We're going to give it a template literal with a background of blue. Testimonial style is where this is where we're using the styles that we've created before and placing them here. And we're going to say before content person 1. Now, if you remember again that before, just like we did with the brush, we are setting the image in the content section of Tailwind config. So this is how we link up the before with an image, like if we want the content. So that means in this motion div or this particular div, we have this image as the content before. And this will basically set the positioning of this image. And inside this, we're just going to have some text. So this is the text in the box. So we're going to add quotations like so. And then we're going to do class name of font play fair with text of 6XL. We're going to add another p tag. Give this a class name of text center text dash XL, and we're just going to add random text again. And that's pretty much it for this. And then so we're going to add another one. This one's going to be background red, content person 2 instead, and give this a delay of 0.2. And actually, I did mess this up. This should be scale. So instead of this being x of -2, we're going to say scale of 0.8. Scale of 1. And we're going to do the same thing for the second section. And then we're going to copy random text for this one as well and save it. And then we just have one more. Copy this entire motion div, go down. We're going to say background of yellow, content person 3, delay of 0.4, and then change the text at the bottom. Once we have that saved, let's double check. If we go to our app, we go down, testimonials, and everything looks good, but it seems like the positioning is a little off. Seems like I'm missing some padding and some positioning. So let me go and fix that. And it was a padding. So if I take out the padding top right here, it should be just padding, and give that a 16. Now it's in the correct position. Perfect. This page out of the way, the last page is going to be the contact. So if we go back to our final build, we have our contact page. If I fill out this form and I try to send a message, this one particularly should be email. It's going to say invalid email address. So if I take this out as well, this field is required. So you're going to have these two fields being required with the invalid email address as one of the validation criteria. And if you complete this, we are going to have it set. We're going to have it send this message to your own email. And we're going to use something called form submit, which is very nice. So in this, all you have to do is set an action on form submit, and you just put your email, and it will send the name, email, and message to your own email. And it's perfect. It's completely free. You can use this as much as you want. And you don't need a backend for this, which is perfect. I've used this in a production app. It's very good. Unless you're getting thousands of emails, this will pose no problems for you. So let's go to our code. So we're going to close the testimonials, and we're going to go to our app file, and we're going to go down, do what we normally do, and we're going to take these two sections, line gradient, I'm going to say that, and we're going to say this is contact, like so. We're going to go up, we're going to import contact from scenes/contact, like so. And we're going to create the file called contact.jsx. And from here, I'm going to close this, close the app, and we're going to import line gradient from /components/line gradient. We're going to import use form from React hook form. So we've downloaded React hook form as one of the packages. Let me double check. I have that installed. Actually, it's not installed. So let's actually install that. So React hook form is a form library that makes it easy for us to have simple form validation as well as input. So we're just going to go and copy this npm I react-form. So we're going to open up our terminal. I'm actually going to close this one. Let's see. It's a little weird. npm I. Okay, there you go. React. Okay. It's a little glitchy over here. React hook form. And once we install that, we can now use React hook form. Now, let me explain a little bit about React hook form. Is that we can use base HTML elements, have it registered into the form library that they have, which is part of use form. So you basically just have to register, add the name, and use form will be able to recognize that. And also you can add error validation, such as required of true and errors.example required. So if this is particularly true, then this is fine. Otherwise, you're going to see this error handling over here, and we're going to be using this, and I'll show you how it's very simple to use. Let me actually run this again for later on. If we go back to our contact, now we should be able to use our form, and we're going to import motion as well. And from here, we're going to create a component contact. Actually, let me close this terminal and this one so you can see. And have it like this. And then from here, we're going to import some stuff from use form. So we're going to say register, trigger, form state of errors, and we're getting this all from use form. So use form, actually this should be evoked. So use form will provide us a register so that we can identify inputs that use form should identify. Trigger will give us the validation. Once we try and validate, we'll be using this function. And then form state gives us the errors if we want to use those. It can even give you the values, but we don't need those. And then from here, I'm going to say on submit function, and this will be async. And in this, we're going to say is valid, and we're going to await for trigger function to happen. So basically, when we submit, we want to see if the form is valid before we do anything. And we want to see, we want it to trigger that it's valid before we get redirected to form submit. And this is why we need to do e.prevent default like this. after it validates. Otherwise, it's just going to go to the next page, or otherwise it won't go to the next page without this. So after it validates, then we can prevent the page swapping. So the form submit works. So it's a very quirk of form submit when you're using it with this library. So we're going to return, and we're going to have a section, and we're going to have an ID of contact so that we are referencing that section. Give it a class name of contact. Actually, no, why would I put the contact? PY of 48, like this. And then we have headings like this. And we're going to go and do the usual. We're going to go testimonials, just copy what we have over here and just modify it. We actually don't need any class name for the entire thing. And we're going to surround this with the div like so. We can say contact me to get started. And the contact me has a different color, so we're going to say span class name of text yellow, and pass in the contact me. I'm going to cut that, paste it over here, and keep it like that. We don't need text of red, and we don't need margin bot. And that should be good for that section. We don't need a description text for this one. And we're going to say we want a div over here under this, and give this a class name of flex. And above medium screen, we're going to say justify and margin Y of 5. And that should be good for the heading. And then from here, we're going to create the next section. It's going to be form and image section. And we're going to do flex box. So we split the image on the left and the form on the right. So that's why we are using flexbox here. So we're going to do a class name of MD flex, MD justify between. And again, remember, we only apply this above medium screens, because when it's small screens, we want them to just be on top of each other. And in this, we're going to do motion.div again. And we're just going to copy all the properties over here, paste them in here. And we can say mount 05. We want this to be coming from the bottom. And this should be Y as well over here. And inside this, we're going to have an image with the source of /assets/contact image.jpg with an alt of contact. And in the next line, we're going to say motion.div, and we're going to do what we normally do. Copy this once more, and we paste it. This is going to have a delay of 0.2. So the form is going to have a delay of 0.2. Everything else is going to be the same. And we're also going to give the class name with a basis of 1/2, margin top of 10, MD, MT 0. Now I did make a mistake. This one should also have the same class name as well, except this will be slightly different. We're going to say flex and justify center. So this takes up half the width. This one also takes half the width. And inside the second one, we're going to give it a form tag. So now this is where we start using our form or React hook form and creating our own form as well. So we're going to start with target underscore blank, so that when we submit, it's going to create a new tab. And on submit, we're going to set the function that we created. So on submit, And the action is going to be a URL that we'll set very shortly. So I'm going to fill out the form first. I'll tell you what we have to set for form submit, and I'll show you how we can do that. So in here, we're going to do input. We're going to have this self-closing. And in this input tag, we're going to set the class name first. So we're going to style it. So this is going to be width of full, background blue, font semi-bold. Placeholder is going to be opaque black. So the placeholder text will be this color and a padding of 3. And we're going to give it a type of text, a placeholder of capitalized name, and we're going to set ... register, and it'll be name like so, and it's going to be required of true max length of 100. So this part right here is part of React Hook form. So we're telling React Hook form, I'm registering this particular input inside of it, and it's called name. And it has validation of it needs to be true, and it has to be a max length of 100. So it has to fit these conditions. Otherwise, we're going to create something over here. We're going to say errors.name. So if there exists an error with this input, we're going to trigger these components underneath. And we're going to give this a class name of text red, margin top of 1. And in here, we're going to say errors.name.type if it is required, and it says this field is required, this text will show up if this error is particularly triggered. But if it's errors.name.type is equal to max length, then we will show the next error, which is max length is 100 char, like that. So as you can see with this, we have both the input and the error validation all in one go. And it's very convenient. And I think this is very intuitive and easy to understand when you're using something like Tailwind. React Hook form is very perfect with Tailwind because we're using the base elements. And then next, we're going to say input. Actually, this should be self-closing. And we can just copy basically same properties. We're going to modify it a little bit, of course. Here we're going to say padding of 3, margin top of 5 here. Type text, we're going to say this is email instead, and then lowercase email as a register. And in here, we're going to set a pattern. And this one is going to be for email. So now I got this from Stack Overflow, but I'll type it out for you. So A through Z, 0 through 9, dot underscore, plus dash, close the bracket, plus, and at the @ sign. Then you have A through Z, 0 through 9, dot dash, and then we have plus, slash dot, and we're going to say A through Z, like so, 2 comma, and then $, /I. So this will validate email based on this regex pattern. So React Hook form will take in this pattern and validate for you if it meets that criteria. And then from here, I'm just going to copy what we had before to make it easier. We're going to say, instead of errors.name, we're going to say errors.email. dot email right here. Change this type to required. We're going to say this should be pattern. And if that one is triggered, we're going to replace this with invalid email address, like so. And then finally, we're just going to copy this entire thing once more. And instead, we're going to say class name with the full, this everything here is okay. Placeholder is going to be message. And we're actually going to change this input tag to a text area instead, because that gives us multiple lines. And we're going to say rows of 4 and a columns of 50. And we're going to give this a message over here. And instead of the pattern, we're just going to say max length of 2000. And instead change this pattern to, or actually first we change the dot email to dot message. And this should be changed to max length. And this one is going to be max length is 2000 character, like so. And then finally, we're just going to have a button. And this button is going to say send me a message. And we need to give it some properties. So type equals submit and a class name of P5, background of yellow, font semi-bold, text of deep blue, margin top of 5, hover of background red, hover of text white, transition, and a duration of 500. And that should be good. All right, with that, we can go back and we can look at form submit. So basically, it's very easy to set up. So if you go down, this is their website. It's in a link in the description is below, so if you want to go to it. So we can just go down and we can say, we just need an action of form submit / formsubmit.co/ your email. So if I go up and I go over to here, we can say HTTPS /formsubmit.co/ just some dummy email at gmail.com. So this is my email right here. And once I save it, now I go to our website and we go over here and go to the contact page. Oh, it seems like this is not aligned, so we'll fix that. So let's say we give it a name, some email at gmail.com, give it some message, and say send me a message, and it goes to form submit. And it gives us a CAPTCHA even. So we choose our tractor. So this is a very hard challenge. There we go. And now we can return to our original site, and we have someone that submitted. And we got the email to our email account, which is perfect. So by the way, in this case, if you did it like this, you have your email basically exposed. So if someone who wants to spam you, they can get your email because it's shown right here. They can see it in the HTML. Basically, they can inspect it and see your email over here. So what you can do is, if I already did it for this account, but if you go back, you can set like action required. You can set this random string if you want instead, because the first time you activate your form by testing it just like I did, they give you a random string that you can put, and this will they will forward the email to your actual email from this particular string. So now if I save it and I send another message, I have the same thing. And as you can see, I got my second one. And this is very easy to use. This is free, perfectly well. I highly recommend it. And now let's fix this styling issue. Fix this is pretty easy. If I go back to the heading section, I just forgot to add some classes. So class name is going to be flex, justify, and to put it at the very far right, and the width of full. So we do that, we get this. Actually, this line gradient is not in a desirable position. So let me fix that. Last thing I forgot to edit is this width over here. We're just going to do width of 1/2. And there's no margin X of auto, and perfect. So now we have everything we need. So let's go to the home. Let's refresh it. Go to contact. Everything pops up. Perfect. And we can send a message to our own email, which is perfect. Now the last thing that we need to build is going to be the footer. The footer is going to be pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to close the contact page. I'm going to go to app.js and scroll down. And we're going to look below the contact. We're going to say footer, like so. And then we're going to import footer from ./scenes/footer. And we're going to create a component in the scenes file or scenes folder. And we're going to call this footer.jsx. And in here, we're going to import, and close this, import social media icons. So now, as I mentioned before, we were going to reuse this. This is where we will be reusing it. So we're going to have a const of footer and export default of footer like this. And we're going to return, give it a semantic tag of footer, because that exists. And then we're going to say class name of h, height of 64, background red, padding top of 10. We're going to give it a div with a class name of width 56 mx auto. And we're going to say social media icons over here with the div in here and the p tag with Jane Esper with a p tag, and we're going to give it a copyright symbol 22 Esper all rights reserved. And then inside this div, we're going to say class name of MD flex justify center MD justify between with text center. Actually, this should, yeah, there you go. And then inside Jane Esper, we're going to say class name of font play fair, font semi bold, text 2 XL, text of yellow, like that. And in here, we're going to give it a class name of font playfair, text of MD, and text of yellow. I'm going to save that. And we're going to see, scroll down. Now we have our bottom side with links to our social media icons. Perfect. And with that, we have our complete website completely finished. But one last thing is that we want to be able to deploy your app for free, and you can put this on an actual website. So to do that, we're going to be using Vercel. But before we do that, I want you to go, and if you don't have a GitHub account, I want you to create a GitHub account. And you can do this by going to your repository section. And if you've never done this, you click new. You can say, you can call it whatever, choose your name, blah, blah, blah. And you create a repository. And in this repository, it gives you some instructions. So this is how you can push up your code into this GitHub page. Now I'm not going to do this because I've already pushed this up. So I'm just going to delete this. But anyways, basically you're going to go into your terminal over here, and you're going to type in all those commands that you saw with git init, git add, things of that nature, and you're going to be able to push those code up. And once you do that, once you have the code, you're going to go to Vercel and you're going to sign up if you haven't already, and you're going to continue with GitHub. And you can say you can authorize Vercel with these permissions. And once we do that, they can verify. So I want you to follow these instructions. I'm going to skip this part so you guys don't see my phone. And once you're there, you're going to have an account on Vercel. Now you won't be seeing this page because I already have it created, but basically you want to connect. You'll see this screen. You want to connect with your GitHub, and you want to connect the GitHub that you've created, and you'll import the repository that you want to choose. So I have this. You can adjust the permissions, figuring out what project that you want to choose. And once you have the project, you're going to be able to deploy, and you can wait for that to happen, and you'll be able to see what you have. You'll be able to see what you have once it gets deployed. And that's all you have to do to deploy your application. It's very straightforward. So now you have your website for free being hosted on Vercel, and it's perfect for everything that you need. And that was it. This was the entire portfolio application that we have built from complete scratch. And I'm so glad that you were able to make it to the end. Not many people do, but once you have done this, you have a fully complete portfolio application that is ready to be posted online. We've created a home page with nice animations. We have a skills page displaying your skills. We have a project page to show all the projects. We have a testimonials page to show what people are saying. We have a contact page that even sends a message to your own email. We've used many different packages. We used React as our main framework library, Tailwind CSS for our styling, Framer Motion for all the animations that you saw, React Hook Form for our form and form validation, React Anchor Link Smooth Scroll so that we can go and navigate to different parts of the page. We even use Form Submit to send the message to your email. We use different VS Code extensions as well, and we have this website fully responsive. On small screens, it looks very good, and you even have Navbar and everything that you need. Now, if you like this content, this took me a long time to build, so it helps out if you could just like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll keep creating these long form videos to build full built applications for your learning purposes, all for free. So like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.